Now, I should say, going back to this book, one of the greatest tasks I felt some years ago was to actually reconstruct the original Tiberian pronunciation tradition, because obviously that is what's behind the vowel signs. So I did that by various means, and one of the things that got me very interested in this particular question was discovery of particular sorts of manuscripts, and one of them was the variety of manuscripts I found written by Karaites in the Middle Ages, which were transcriptions of the Hebrew Bible in Arabic letters, which is a very interesting phenomenon. I mean, that there were Karaites, mainly in Palestine, it seems, in the 10th and 11th centuries, were writing some of their manuscripts of the Hebrew Bible in Arabic transcription. I mean,
meaning that the words were Hebrew, but instead of writing a Hebrew aleph, they wrote an Arabic aleph.
Right. They transcribed. But what they were transcribing, crucially, was the oral reading. They were not transliterating letter by letter from what they see. Most of the manuscripts were not. The majority of manuscripts, they were transcribing what they heard in the pronunciation tradition.
Wow.
And the important thing is that most of them were really representing essentially the Tiberian tradition of pronunciation.
Wow.
So that became an important source for reconstruction of some of the features of the Tiberian pronunciation tradition. Other important sources were so-called Masoretic treatises, many of which had survived in the Geniza, and some of them in other sources.
Why do you say so-called?
Sorry?
You said so-called Masoretic treatises. Are they not actually Masoretic treatises?
No, I mean, I didn't mean that in a pejorative way. I mean,
but
what people call them, at least what I call them, and I think...
So they didn't refer to themselves as... In other words, whoever wrote down one of these treatises wouldn't have said, I've written a Masoretic treatise. What would he have said? I'm writing something on the Hebrew language, or...
No, they were... Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, they were there are some terms, like Kuntrasei and Masorah was one of them.
Okay. And Kuntras is choirs, meaning like a bunch of, part of a codex.
They were regarded essentially as being a kind of an expansion of the Masoretic, a development of the Masoretic tradition of the Masoretes. Put it that way. They were not... in the 10th century, a tradition of grammar developed, Hebrew grammar. But that was a sort of innovation in Judaism, which had its inspiration to a large extent from the Islamic world, from the Arabic traditions of grammar. But within Judaism, there was a tradition, as we've been talking about, of so-called Masoretic activity, which involved, crucially, at some point at least, in the early stages, development of notation systems for their oral traditions. But it also involved writing notes in margins of manuscripts, which essentially were kind of notes which assisted in the accurate written transmission of the Hebrew Bible, known as Masoretic notes. But then a further stage, which seemed to be a sort of later stage, was the writing of independent treatises on aspects of the transmission of the Hebrew Bible. Now, so these treatises sometimes related to the accent signs, but some of them related specifically to pronunciation of vowel signs, and those treatises, or those parts of the treatises which related to the pronunciation of vowel signs.
Like, for example, there's Diktukea Ta'amim, which is attributed to Aaron ben Asher. Would that be an example of a...
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the most famous Masoretic treatises, which is, as its name implies, the fine points of the accents was concerned largely with the accents, the Ta'amim. However, it does have a few sections on pronunciation of vowels, particularly the Shva.
But we're going to get to the Shva. I can't wait. I'm excited about the Shva.
But yeah, so anyhow, to cut a long story short, these kind of sources which I was finding in the Geniza, Masoretic treatises, and Tiberian and Karaite manuscripts, I think very inspired me to try to reconstruct the Tiberian pronunciation tradition. I have to say, I was very much indebted to previous scholars' work on Masoretic treatises, largely. Ilan Eldar did some very important work on the treatise known as Hidayat al-Qari, and then and then some of the great scholars such as Israel Yavin, also, and Morag, they wrote quite a lot about Masoretic treatises. Nehemia Aloni. But it was the world of those Karaite transcriptions of Hebrew, which I think was a kind of very exciting dimension to all this. Anyhow, so I eventually, after a lot of years went by, put all this material together, and I produced this book, which is open access, by the way.
Yeah, that's amazing, by the way. I love that. So you can legally download it.